You're watching Oilers Nation Everyday with Tyler Yaremchuk. Your one-stop shop for all things Oilers.
John Klingberg. Same John Klingberg that's only played 31 games in 2 years. Let's get into it with the lead. Oh, welcome into Oilers Nation Everyday, live from the Sports Closet studio. Check them out online, sportscloset.ca. Show is also a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. We start the show with breaking rumors, and we will call them exactly that. Darren Dreger tweeting the Edmonton Oilers could be front runners for John Klingberg. His exact word was primary target. He did also say, or add in, too soon to say. TSN's Ryan Rishaug adding in, definitely an interesting fit for the Oilers, has a chance to win, potentially play a big role if he performs well. Also notable, he was injured last season, and your one-year deal would be eligible to have a bonus structure in them. Okay, let's talk about this.
No.
Okay. Game notes brought to you by
I could not. Why?
Yesterday, there was a part of me yesterday, Liam, that was like, free bullet.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally understand that.
I am now petrified just because we're getting the whole 5 to 7 teams interested, Oilers making a push, blah, 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 blah. I'm worried they're going to pay too much for this guy because this Oilers front office cannot help themselves.
You do get that weird feeling that it's going to be like $2 million bonus if you play 5 games.
Or if he like plays in a playoff game or some shit like that.
Step on the ice for practice, you get $20 million.
I
just don't get it.
I'm nowhere near convinced that John Klingberg is a better player than Troy Stecher is.
I'm not either. And the competitiveness thing is what has the edge up for me on Troy Stecher.
Yes, maybe you can get a little bit of something from Klingberg in the perspective of like, this might be make or break for his career. So maybe you do get him coming in to play his absolute best hockey. But like the Oily accountant says, what's the max you pay him? Min
with bonus. That's what they're gonna do,
I guess. But like, what do you even make the bonus to make it fair? Like, does he just have to play in 25 games to earn it?
No, he has to play in 10 games to earn it. Corey Perry and him have both done this, and
I'm saying, like, what would you do? What would you be? Where's the world where you're okay with the contract for John Klingberg if it ends up happening?
I would do something like, to be fair to him, he's a veteran in the league. He's always been around the block. $1 million.
Yep.
And if you play 50% of the playoff games, you get like another $1 million or something, 1.5, something like that.
So if you play in the majority of the Oilers playoff games or majority of playoff and regular season games, you could even say, because here's the thing, like they're gonna, if they end up doing this, and again, who knows if they actually are, if this ends up happening, I worry that we get a month of good hockey from John Klingberg and the Oilers overreact by not doing something big on their blue line at the deadline. And that's a mistake. Like, that's why I keep coming back to, I don't know if you need to do it as much as it's free, maybe a free bullet, a free shot to take on a guy who maybe has some upside. I truly think his upside is third pairing defenseman. I don't think his upside is play 22 minutes a night next to Darnell Nurse in the playoffs.
I think the reason I was going with the playoff idea of the bonus rather than a regular season is to kind of keep him motivated, to be honest. Like I guess. Like I look back to the Anaheim year when Anaheim was not good and he ended up signing it. He signed very late that deal, correct? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I can't remember exactly when it was, but he wasn't a July 1st signing because he was asking for so much money. And then he just like wasn't good, went to Mini, was fine, I suppose, but nothing special. And I think that's the way you kind of keep him going. If you do get him here, is like, hey, you actually have to perform to stay in the lineup in this team.
Yeah.
But I also think that sends a weird message to Troy Stecher to bring in a guy who's maybe slightly better than him.
Who maybe has slightly more upside than him is how I'd phrase that.
You also have another season of Troy Stecher.
You do?
Who will make less than whatever you likely pay John Klingberg.
Correct. It's a good day for us to have Frank Seravalli on the show. He'll join and we'll discuss, get his take on that, couple of other potential D-man targets. Also, in about 5 minutes, we're going to be joined by former Oiler Alex Chiasson. He's also a Stanley Cup champion. He's recently retired. So if you got some questions for Chiasson, feel free to pop them into the YouTube chat. Our YouTube chat, of course, brought to you by Odd Company and the all-new Nation Beer Everyday Lager, a crisp, clean lager crafted not just for game day, but for everyday back-to-back games this week, by the way. So kick your feet up, crack open a nice cold Nation beer. When they are cold, they are delicious. Or hey, if you're looking for a night out, one of the 2 Odd Company locations in Edmonton downtown or in the Ritchie neighborhood. All right, Liam, let's cruise along. I'm gonna let's get some takes here on this Klingberg thing. Sam Squatch, Klingberg should want the oil instead of the other way around. I do think, like, again, mutual interest. He is a free agent, so I guess that kind of makes sense.
He definitely called them.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Then the interest came from there. So,
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. He has more size, which is what we're looking at. But it almost goes back to the Ristolainen debate we had, where, like, he has size, he's not physical. You can't just look and be like, very large, must be good physical defenseman. Like, John Klingberg doesn't bring that to your lineup. Where, again, maybe I'm speaking out of 2 sides of my mouth on this whole thing is, I've always said that Nurse works best with a puck mover. His good results were with Tyson Barrie. He had great results in the playoffs with Philip Broberg. So maybe John Klingberg can be that guy, but it just goes back to, I don't want 6 good weeks of John Klingberg coming up until the deadline to convince this Oilers front office that they don't need to go spend serious assets on a top 4 defenseman. That's where the concern comes in for me. You know?
Yeah, and I think too, just talking about the size, you can have size, but if you don't use it, then what does it even matter? And also, like, Jason Demers was on our show yesterday, someone who played with Klingberg and said he just doesn't play that way.
Yeah.
And that's fine too. Like, not everyone's going to be this big physical guy. And just looking back at his hits, he maybe averages 50 hits a year, a little bit less throughout his career, which isn't any, like, less than 1 a game. You know, you don't need this guy to be some physical juggernaut for you by any means, but, like, they have Evan Bouchard. They have Donnell Nurse. These guys.
And the second power play unit never plays.
Yeah, and when it does, like, you kind of got to give Nurse that time a little bit too.
Yeah,
out of
and
respect
Ekholm.
to, like, how well both. Yeah, Ekholm too. How well they've both played. I don't know. I don't think this is the guy the Oilers need. I think they got
I'm with you.
Someone who's puck moving guy, but better defensively.
Just a better defenseman, I think.
I.e., another Brett Kulak.
And again, John Klingberg, maybe he bounces back great. And again, I think there is something to a player getting fully healthy. And he's only played 31 games in the last 2 years. That shows you, or sorry, it's a bit more than that because he did have those 50 games with Ottawa. So he's played 81 games over the last 2 years. He's basically missed a full season of hockey. If you can get him back to what he was doing when he was with Dallas, which is 1,000+ minutes a season at 5-on-5, and actually giving them really good numbers.
Totally.
Like, he was a really good defenseman 4 or 5 years ago.
That's what made it, when he became a free agent, so interesting. That, like, he ended up on the Anaheim Ducks. You know what I mean?
Remember, he apparently turned down like a 7x6 with Dallas. He turned down like $42 million guaranteed because he wanted to test the free agent market. And then the market just, like, poof, evaporated on him. It was crazy.
That would have really changed the Stars. Like, in, like, a weird way. Like, I don't know. Maybe it would have continued to be good. Like, sometimes staying in the same spot is just good. Like, you're obviously used to the environment. I'd be curious to do a little deep dive on that.
Yeah.
I won't do it right now, but maybe later.
All right, we're going to be joined by Alex Chiasson in just a moment here. AB, I know you shot him a quick note in the chat there, but before we do that, just a couple of quick pieces of news to pass along. Tristan Jarry on waivers out in Pittsburgh. He's going to clear. He has way too much term. It's like $5.3 million for the next 2 seasons. I think he's in all likelihood a buyout candidate this summer, and he'll be looking for a bounce back next season somewhere. Again, not really an Oilers conversation to have today because he's probably going to spend the next month or so in the minors. The other piece of news is that the Oilers have called up Noah Philp. It's test drive time for Noah Philp. I think we talked about this. They're trying to get an answer before the playoffs, right?
Yeah, interesting timing though. Just the fact of, like, Josh Brown is still here. And not to the discredit of Josh Brown of, like, sending him down, but I just think, like, from a Caps perspective, it's interesting they have 2 extra forwards and an extra defenseman. But Noah Philp will do well. He could really change their playoff plans. Their deadline plans and their playoff plans if it goes well.
Yeah. That's fair. All right. Do we want to get out to the Star Mechanical guest line, Edmonton's #1 plumbing and heating company? Find them online, starmechanical.ca, residential, commercial, 24/7 emergency service. You can find out more by visiting them online at starmechanical.ca. Former Edmonton Oiler. He's a Stanley Cup champion. He is recently retired. Alex Chiasson joins the show. First off, Alex, I see you in my preview window. Are we doing this on the phone or are we doing video?
I'm on the. Is this working good now?
This is good. We can hear you. Thanks for popping on. Let me just kind of ask you, what's the first little bit of retirement been like since you made the announcement?
It's been weird. Not gonna lie. I think when you've played pro for a while, and I mean, I just announced it, but I've kind of been. I went to Detroit a training camp in September, and didn't make the team there, and so I've been back home since early October. So I've kind of known for a while where, maybe hockey was over, but it takes a little bit of time to get adjusted. I think when you play, you take it for granted where your day-to-day is just kind of planned for you with the travel, the games, practices, and whatnot. And now I've got to figure out, the next chapter. But I'm doing good now. It's been good and busy. I got a baby at home. My wife and I had a baby this summer, so we've been busy with that.
Is maybe that family reason? Like I'm looking at your career, 651 games in the NHL. It was an unbelievable run. Did you ever consider going to Europe, or was that just maybe a bit too much with the young family?
No, I did actually. I considered it, and I think maybe I waited a little bit too long for my window from some of the places I wanted to go. I had hip surgery in January of 2024, about a year ago. Did all the rehab, obviously worked really hard to get back up to speed. But I didn't play for a full year, and I tried to get back and play, and it was just to be honest, it was a tough pill to swallow for me. And but I think it's part of pro hockey. Unfortunately, you can't play forever. But I'm happy with. I think I've had time to take a step back and realize, all that I've accomplished in my career and how long I've played for. And I think, at least for me, like mentally, I think like I wasn't really like 100% committed to the game like I used to. And I think maybe that was kind of like, I wouldn't say a wake up call, but maybe that was like, a way for me to, is this still something I'd like to do? I think I've always been someone that's been fully invested in my career, playing and whatnot. And I don't know if I had the juice that it needed to be in the NHL anymore. So here we are.
You obviously played 3 seasons with the Edmonton Oilers, but what was that first season like, coming in on the PTO and then scoring 22 goals, finding a spot on the power play? How did that all go down for you, and what do you remember about that season?
Yeah, it was weird as far as obviously I'd won the cup the year prior with Washington. Didn't have the contract I was looking for, and then came in training camp on the tryout. Didn't play the first, I think, handful of games of the season, and got an opportunity and made the best of it. I feel like it's kind of always been a little bit about my career is I've always believed in myself and try to make the most of every opportunity. And that's definitely the one that I got rewarded the most for. And I mean, obviously I played with a lot of ice time with Connor and Leon, and that usually helps.
I wanted to talk a little bit. We'll get back into the Oilers stuff, but I think we both wanted to talk to you a little bit about your Stanley Cup run with the Washington Capitals. Obviously, on the ice, that was an electric run that the team had. You finished the job in Vegas as well. Was there any part of, or was there a moment in that season, or maybe it didn't even come until the playoffs, where it kind of like hit you like, man, this group is special. Like, we can actually do the damn thing.
Yeah. I think throughout the year, obviously we had a really good team. I think when we beat Pittsburgh in the second round, Game 6, I think that's kind of like, I don't know, there was like just this the special energy in the group. I think everyone is obviously the team, like Washington at the time, hadn't been able to get through Pittsburgh for I don't know how many years in the first or second round. And I thought that year after we won that series, it was kind of like, okay, like we're good now. Let's kind of go and play. Yeah, it was a weird. I don't know how to really describe. I've actually said this a couple times in the last couple of years. I think it's like one of those things where maybe for the guys that had been there for a while, perhaps it was kind of like a weight lifted off their shoulders and feeling more free to go out and play. But I would say that's definitely the part of the season or playoff that I felt like, okay, like I don't know. It just kind of felt like we were going to win it all at that point.
And then we all know about the famous celebrations after Ovi in the Bellagio pool. Do you have a favorite post Stanley Cup win memory with the Caps?
There's a lot of those. I think when we got back to DC was pretty neat. We went to a baseball game, and Nats game. That was cool. I think for me, it was just like, I think one night we had a dinner with all the wives, girlfriends, and family. Everyone was there. I would say for me, that's definitely the most like special part was, obviously in hockey, like it's a huge like team sports, but I think you get guys now, more so now than ever. You have guys that are from everywhere on the planet, right? So everyone's got their own kind of story, how they get to the NHL and how they've had like people that support them, whether it's, agents, mom and dad, or family members that have been there along the way. I think for me, that was one part that was neat, was like everyone was kind of reunited together, kind of sharing that cool moment and just having like the Stanley Cup there kind of like glued everyone together in some way. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think the year after, the 2 years after we won, I was still in touch with some guys, and now obviously it's been a couple of years, and everyone knows some guys are still playing, guys playing other teams and whatnot, and there are times where I'll reach out to a guy I played with that year, or someone reached out to me, and it's like we were just together like yesterday. I think it's just like one of those things is when you win with a group, you just it lasts forever.
Have you been watching much of the Oilers so far this season? If so, what do you kind of make of this team?
Yeah, I watch. We live in Boston now, so it's just with the time change and the baby. I don't usually make it up to that. I don't usually stay up that late. But when they come out east, I've watched the games. Obviously they're right there. Like the last couple of years, last year they're one game away. I think they're in the mix every year. Obviously they have special talent up front. Got a pretty good defensive core, and Stuart Skinner's been good for the group. So I think they're one of my top 4 picks going into the year, going into playoff or the second half of the year here. I think anything's possible. I think these guys are hungry. Obviously they've kind of been like really close for the last like 3 to 4 years. And I think the city and the fan base and definitely the players, the guys that have been there, have gone through like the tough stretch. I think they deserve it all. So yeah, I like this group.
You spent 3 seasons in Edmonton. Most of your career goals were with the Edmonton Oilers, or at least that's where you were number 1 on. What did you like, though, away from the rink about being in Edmonton? I always love asking players this question because, I mean, obviously we're Edmontonians. I think Edmonton gets an unfair rap sometimes as a place that, guys don't want to play. But what was maybe a surprising part about being in Edmonton and playing in the city? And what's maybe something that you really liked about the city?
Yeah, I think to go along with that, I think maybe like to be quite honest, I think maybe going into it, my first year, I thought I didn't think too much of it. Obviously, it's maybe when you go to like I don't know, like Dallas, Texas, or Washington D.C., maybe those are cities that you think you're going to enjoy more than going to Edmonton. And I'm not saying this because I'm just on the show. I've really, 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 my wife and I really appreciated our time in Edmonton. I thought it's a special community. We live just outside the city. It's special to be an Oiler for sure, and all the history and all that. I thought like driving to there's no other feeling than driving to a game on the Saturday night hockey in Canada. You can't find that anywhere else. I remember that for me that was definitely a special one. But no, I think Edmonton was a place where we've got to know people. I got to know some people like like I used to go to like Acme Meat Market, like a butchery shop, and I was there like every week. I think the first name of the owner or GM there was Corey. That's a great man. Like I just really enjoyed that part. I thought it was like a close community, and we just enjoyed it. Like we had a dog. We got a dog at I think COVID summer out of Buck Lake, Alberta, a black lab, and yeah, it's just special memories. I think it's kind of like things really like more special. Obviously, hockey was going well for me, and but I also think I really enjoyed like living there and all the other things that came with it. It was better than I first originally thought for sure.
All right, I got a couple more for you. We're going to call this next part Advice with Alex. So I want to start, you hear me out on this one, but we're getting to the point where it's trade deadline time, and there's going to be new faces coming into the lineup. And one thing that we talk about, it's been a big conversation this year, even with a guy like Jeff Skinner, is players who just can't seem to get used to playing with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. What would be your best piece of advice for a player coming to the Oilers who's going to be playing with one of those two big guns? Best advice for playing with 97 and 29.
Go to the net. That usually helps. I don't know. I think they're just like special players. They just see the things differently. I learned so much from those two guys, but at least for me, and then that was my game. I think that's just also like part of my game was I always found like the soft area around the net, find the space that was open. But yeah, I mean, at times it can be like difficult for sure. Like they're just on a different level than anyone else, and it can be challenging. But I think simplifying your game, at least for me, was always a key part, and it seemed like I always got rewarded for it.
Advice for a player coming into camp on a PTO, earning jobs off a PTO. You did that so well so many times in your career. What would be your best piece of advice to a player going into camp trying to earn a contract?
I think just believe in yourself. I felt like for me, that was my biggest asset, was just I believe in my ability. I believe in how I can help a team. And the rest always kind of took care of itself.
I guess my last one for you. You played your first NHL game at 22 years old with the Dallas Stars. If you could go back in time and give your 22-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think just enjoy it more than I think I really did enjoy it, like my whole career. I think to go along with that is my first year in Dallas, I lived with Stefan Robida at his house. And I remember one of the first thing he told me, just soak it in, like it goes by so fast. And in my head, I was kind of like, how fast can it go by? And now I realize what he was saying is so true. So I've really made the most of my opportunities. I do think I miss the game, but I think I miss like all of the like BS with the players. I think that's like the travel and the dinners and like all that stuff. I think that's the part that is away from the game that is very like is fun, and that's how like everyone's in it. Everyone's got a passion for it. Everyone wants to win, and I think I miss the guys. I miss my teammates, like competing in practice, all that stuff. That's the part I miss the most.
I guess maybe one more, just because I saw it get put into the chat a lot. Obviously, the retirement announcement is still pretty fresh, but people are wondering, what do you think you're going to do next? What's the next chapter for Alex Chiasson? Do you want to stay in hockey? Do you want to get into coaching? Do you have outside interests you want to explore? What do you want to do?
Yeah, so I re-enrolled after my hip surgery in January 2024. I re-enrolled at school at Boston University. That's where I'm at right now. So So I got 3 classes left. I'm hoping to graduate in May of 2025. So it's been challenging at times. It's not easy at 34 to go back to school and try to get that degree, but it was very important to me. I felt like I've put a lot of time growing up into school and all that. So definitely something that was definitely important for me to get done. As far as like what I'd like to do, I do feel like I'd like to be involved in hockey. I think it's in my DNA. It's what I love to do. I'd be interested in other things to do. I'm not really sure what avenue I'd like to be in, but I really like the game. I really like the whole team aspect of it, and hoping that something comes up that's be interesting, and work my way through it and see where it goes.
Well, if you want to get into hockey media, you know who to call. I really appreciate you giving us some time here today, though. Congrats on the new addition to your family. Congrats on the great career, and thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
there you go.
See you later.
Stanley Cup champion, former Oiler Alex Chiasson on the show. We'll throw that up as a podcast a little bit later on as well. But man, that run, 22 goals that season, that was unbelievable. And we always talk, like, you could tell there were those runs when Chiasson was on a heater and he was feeling it. He was just a perfect fit there. He was the original answer, next to 97.
People forget that. He was the original answer.
We have a belt. We have the wrestling belt. We don't have it up here. It's downstairs. We have the wrestling belt.
I did forget until he mentioned that. Like, yeah, like didn't play this however many games to start the year, and obviously like the PTO thing. I guess you are the guy on the outside looking in, but yeah, fantastic career, Stanley Cup champion. You kind of forget how long he was with the Oilers for.
3 full seasons with the Oilers, more or less. Like
great Oiler,
almost 200 games in the regular season.
42 goals.
I think it's one of those two you kind of forget because his end time was like those weird COVID years, right?
Yeah.
And that's just a blur.
When you just played the Ottawa Senators and just beat them up every single night. Those were the days.
Those were man, some of those stat lines when the Oilers played the Sens in that Canadian division, just like beating the shit out of them.
They called up Skinner for a game.
They did.
And played him.
Yeah.
And beat him up. I think they won 7-5. I think they were down in that game quite significantly, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yep, that was awesome.
I
saw the highlight there of him fighting Corey Perry.
I know. We probably could have asked him a few more.
I know. I wanted to kind of get into like some former teammates and stuff, but I know we've got stuff to get to.
We do. It's a busy day. It's a Sherwood Ford Giant Game Day edition of the program.
I was going to say, when we have Tyler Ennis on next, whenever that may be, can you remind me to ask him about Mikko Koskinen? I want to just ask him what he was like as a goalie.
Just a general character check.
I feel like he was underrated.
He totally was. We did not respect Mikko enough.
No, that's why I want to ask him.
Just our cheesy gordita crunch king.
We raised him to the rafters.
We did. You know what? That's fair.
Yeah, we did.
This show, we make it a point. This show is good to Oilers goalies.
Yeah, we're pro Oilers goalies. Unless... Actually, I can't even think of like one.
Oh, yeah, we were pretty mean to Jack.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, he stunk.
But to be fair, he did it to himself.
Yeah, he did. He was really bad. And also that's partially on the Oilers. Just get Koskinen on one day. You can ask him yourself. We could probably find that.
Let's get Lico on. I'll call him Mikko when he comes on.
I was going to say, we're so nice to the Oilers goalies. We did do the whole Lico thing.
Yeah. But I think I looked then. He had a 9-17 one year.
I know.
That's crazy.
Like you kind of look at that and you're like, oh yeah, that's why they gave him that contract.
Yeah.
That made sense.
Yeah. I liked him. That was a good duo. Him and Smith.
All right, let's get to some game notes brought to you by our friends at Charm Diamond Centers. They are proudly Canadian owned and operated with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. You can also apply for a Charm Diamond Flexity card today and get approved for no interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. The Oilers in Minnesota tonight. They obviously beat the Wild earlier on in the year 7-1 in their last trip to Minnie. That was our night where we had our party down at Dog Patch. But Noah Philp is going to be up and in the lineup tonight, going to play his first game since November. He went down to Bakersfield, had a nice little run. He's currently sitting at 17 points in 28 games with the Bakersfield Condors. But since he went down, again, a nice little run. He's coming back up. Here's where I think this is a little bit different than like the conversation of, do you call up a Matt Savoy? Could he give you any sort of a spark? Savoy is obviously a bit more of a long-term project. I don't think anyone is denying that or saying otherwise. I don't even think people are really saying that he couldn't help you. but you want to properly develop Savoy and then call him up at a time or into a spot where he can play the role that best suits him, which is in all likelihood on a scoring line.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to put it is Noah Philp has bottom 6 attributes and Matthew Savoy doesn't.
Matthew Savoy one day will be a top 6 fixture on the Oilers.
Yes.
Noah Philp's ceiling is, and this isn't even meant to be like disrespectful or whatever to the player, but like he's 26 years old. His ceiling is a Derek Ryan type of player who can be in your bottom 6. Maybe one day he's a third line center. Maybe one day he's a really, really good high end fourth line center. But you want Noah Philp to be a guy who plays 12 or 13 minutes, kills penalties, maybe gets a little bit of second power play time, wins draws for you, and really just does good things with his size and speed at 5v5. So I love this call up. I think you need to know what you have in him, because leading into the deadline, if you get 4 good weeks out of Noah Philp right here, or 5 good weeks out of Noah Philp right here, I know we have that sort of awkward little 4 Nations break in the middle of this whole thing. But if you can get 4 good weeks out of Noah Philp and you are confident saying, hey, this guy can play for us every day down the stretch and into the playoffs, then maybe you don't need to spend a 3rd round pick on a new 4th line center. Maybe you can use that asset and get more depth on the wing. Maybe you can add another defensive piece, whatever you need to end up doing. Like, I don't know. I just think it's important to have this answer. It also circles back to the Jeff Skinner conversation of like, don't go out looking for more scoring until you know what you have in Jeff Skinner. And I think with Philp here, it's like, hey, you might not need to spend at the deadline if this guy comes in and provides and turns out to be an internal solution.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm kind of writing an article right now of like forwards that could become Oilers or maybe could be targets, but it's also difficult because they have so many forwards and guys who can come into the lineup and kind of change things. And again, we don't like the cliche, but it's so true. Like these guys who could technically be like deadline ads in Philp and Evander Kane, and they do change the idea of your bottom 6, which also brings me back to the Klingberg thing in a way of like, is you actually don't need to bring him in because you're going to have this money because your forward group is that good and you have guys in roles that like you can just go out and get a good forward. But just on Philp, like, yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. I don't think the ceiling is incredibly high with him, which is fine, but I also don't think the floors, he's got a good floor. Like, I think he, at best, like you said, is like spot 3rd line center. Yeah. Like when you need him at a push, like, yeah, he can play a role there. He's someone who's just like,
and that's consistent. Good. Like, it's totally find him as an undrafted free agent. That's great.
The fact he's played NHL games is quite frankly a miracle. To be honest, like
when you were
played for the Golden Bears.
When you were in that spot, like again, the U of A love the Golden Bears. They churn out a very high percentage of talent compared to their counterparts at U Sports. But like, it's Philp, Derek Ryan. The list isn't
Chris Knobloch.
Like the list isn't that long of guys who end up playing NHL games. Me, Zach Sawchenko was the goalie who like got a game a couple years ago, but like the list isn't all that long is my point. His brother Luke Philp got a couple of games.
That's right. Reese, I have a little project fair. Can you tell me how many games there are between now and the trade deadline? I know we talk about the weeks and stuff, but I'm curious to know how many games are that break.
Couple of more game notes. Oilers are in the middle of a tough schedule here. They were in the Pacific time zone, then they went out east, and then they were in the Central. And now this road trip here, they're going Central tonight, Mountain tomorrow, Pacific on Saturday. So multiple road trips in a 2-week span. That span across 3 time zones. It's going to be a really, really tough run here for the Oilers. This will be the 3rd and final meeting between the Oilers and the Minnesota Wild. With a win tonight, the Oilers can earn their first season series victory over Minnesota since the 2018-19 campaign. The road team has won both games so far in this head-to-head. Coombsy's got more game notes up at OilersNation.com. You can give those a read. Our friends at Sherwood Ford the Giant also gave us some game notes as well. Let's give those a listen.
Oilers win incoming. The Oilers have battled the Wild 2 times in the first half of the season, and Leon Draisaitl's led the Oilers with 5 points in those games. Keep it hot against the Wild.
With Monday's win, Stuart Skinner improves his all-time record in the month of January to 15-3-2 with a save percentage of .923.
Let's hope what happened last weekend in Vegas to the Wild also happens in St. Paul tonight.
Wow,
ooh, we got a little extra one. Also, the first one, Jessica Lynn, she lost her voice, so she was just flipping pieces of paper. If you're a podcast listener, that's
I was going to say a little bit of Love Actually in that one. If you know what if you're picking up what I'm laying down.
Liam.movies.
Way to play through the pain though for her as well.
Yeah, that's great. Dayton says RIP to the podcast listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I didn't know that was going to happen. 19 games between now and the deadline, by the way, for the Edmonton Oilers.
Good job, Reese.
Thank you, Reese.
Let's continue along with a lineup report for our friends over at Booster Juice. We are excited to have Booster Juice back as a proud partner, a proud puck partner for our Jasper Pond Hockey Tournament next weekend, January 23rd to 25th on Lake Mildred. We're powered by Booster Juice. You can visit a location today to refuel, refresh, and re-energize, and download the new Booster Rewards app to earn, order, and enjoy. Let's get to the lineups. Let's start with the Edmonton Oilers in this one, where the only change is they are not going to go 11-7 tonight. They're going to go traditional 12-6. McDavid with Nuge and Hyman, Podkolzin with Draisaitl and Arvidsson, Janmark with Henrique and Brown. I like that trio being back together. Perry, Philp, and Kapanen. I actually think this trio can work really well on the cycle in the offensive zone. Kapanen's been surprising in that role. We know what Corey Perry can do. Noah Philp with that big body, good offensive instincts. I like this trio.
Who was the winger when Philp played against Nashville? Was that Janmark or was that Brown? I can't remember who it was. Oh, no, it was Kajula.
Yeah.
The Kajula. What's that thing you say?
Could you imagine?
You're right. I think that can work really well. And I think having that speed with Corey Perry is good. Corey Perry's still such a great player and adapted to his role. And I like that trio. And Kapanen got a penalty kill shift last game.
He did. And I actually thought he was surprisingly good on the PK.
So I was looking at with the forwards today for like trade acquisitions. The only player the Oilers haven't played in the bottom six on the penalty kill outside of Jeff Skinner is Corey Perry. I meant just the ones in the lineup. So
yeah. Matthias Ekholm not on the ice today for morning skate. He's being labeled as a game time decision. That would explain why Josh Brown is still up with the team, even with the recall of Noah Philp. But Nurse with Stetcher, Kulak with Bouchard, Emberson with Brown. We'll see if those actually end up being the pairings tonight, or if they end up doing some other variation of them. So yeah, we'll see if Matthias Ekholm is available. Obviously, that would be a big loss for the Edmonton Oilers, but the Minnesota Wild are also incredibly banged up. Let's get to their lineup tonight. No Kaprizov, no Faber, no Jacob Lauko. They're already missing Jared Spurgeon, who's on the IR. They're already without Jonas Brodin. They are missing just a ton of bodies. So the forward group for Minnesota, Marco Rossi with Matt Boldy and Matt Zuccarello. Still a pretty good top line. I think Matt Boldy right now is kind of in that mix of he's one of the more underrated players in the game. If you watch a lot of games outside of, call it your favorite team, not just Oilers fans, but everyone, then I think you kind of know how good Matt Boldy is, but he hasn't hit the level of maybe being properly recognized for how high quality of a young player he is. Freddie Gaudreau with Ryan Hartman and Marcus Johansson. Joel Eriksson Ek on the third line, traditionally an Oilers killer, with Marcus Foligno and Yakov Trenin. Marat Kuznetsov with Ben Jones, and potentially could be Devin Shore drawn back in the line for tonight. Liam, hello.
Good call. I'll be wearing my Devin Shore jersey at Virtual Golf tonight.
Oh, it is. Yeah, Wednesday. Virtual Golf night for you. Jacob Middleton with John Merrill is the top pairing. Yikes. Declan Chisholm with Zach Bogosian is the second pairing. Yikes. Travis Dermott with David Yaremchuk is the third pairing. Travis Dermott, revenge for Travis Dermott. Man, this mini team is banged up.
Yeah, they really are. And good for the Oilers. It's a good chance. And I was kind of like, it sucks to lose Ekholm in any situation, but if you're going to make him miss a game, you want it to be against a banged up team. And this Minnesota team is the definition of banged up. Like you said, no Kirill Kaprizov, missed 10 games in a row. Matt Boldy, you mentioned him, 3 goals in his last 5 games. He's done really well without Kaprizov in the lineup too. They're usually kind of locked in there on the top line with Marco Rossi as well. But yeah, Minnesota not been doing so awesome.
No, we have a Minnesota fan in the chat who says, we'll let you scrubs win another game only because we are severely crippled. Yes. So banged up. He says, with a full roster, yes, we own the Oilers. Well, Minnesota as of late, again, the injuries are the big part of this, but they're coming off a 4-1 loss to the Vegas Golden Knights. They did beat the San Jose Sharks, but before that, they lost 6-1 to Colorado. They beat St. Louis 6-4, a high-scoring affair. They beat Carolina 4-0. They beat Washington 4-3. Like, they were on a pretty decent little run there, even without a guy like Kaprizov. But now that the injuries have piled up, it's going to be tough for them tonight against the Oilers. For the Oilers, again, trying to stay right in the thick of things. And when it comes to that Pacific Division, because the Vegas Golden Knights lost again. Edmonton with a win can move within 2 points of the Pacific Division, or the top spot, I should say, in the Pacific Division.
Yeah. Tough home loss yesterday. No, they were on the road, sorry, weren't they?
Yeah.
5-3 against Nashville.
Crazy they lost to Nashville.
Yeah, and you know what, too? Like, the gap obviously was big. What was it, 6 points? But like Vegas weren't going to go on the heater. They were going to go on. They were on forever, and the others aren't going to be on the heater. They're kind of on forever too. But if the others can just narrow it down and just like take their opportunities when they come, they know the result of the game last night, and they know what can happen if they win.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's also about building that gap between LA too.
Yeah, you want to make sure you can at least be comfortable in your standings when it comes to home ice advantage in the first round. So
yeah, you always want to look ahead, but there's those pesky Kings behind you.
All right, Frank's going to swing by in a bit, but for now, let's do the game day betting challenge for our friends at Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Jay is not here. He is in Toronto, so we'll be giving Jay's picks for him. But did anyone get a win last game?
In a 1-0 game, no winners.
All losers on the Bet365 game day betting.
That's fine. When you lose 1-0, and when you win 1-0, everyone loses unless you picked Stuart Skinner save prop, like we all did off the show.
Yeah, we did. I don't think it's a good night to do the Pickard save prop because he usually doesn't face a ton of shots.
No.
Do they even have it up on the site?
I was gonna say I'll take a look right now. If
his over/under's 20.5. I don't think he's getting
really. He had faced 30 when they played. It's 20.5.
Yeah, minus 130 on the over. I don't know.
I'm in.
I'm nervous about that.
Mm.
Oilers like to only give up like 22 shots when he plays. Anyways, Kate, let's get to our picks here for tonight. I'm up first. I got Leon Draisaitl to go 4+ shots on goal. I'm juicing it up, Liam. He's hit this in 3 of his last 5, coming off a 5-shot game against the LA Kings. He's hit this actually in 4 of his last 6, 7 of his last 10. He's been doing it at a pretty solid clip, so I love that I'm getting it at plus 155. That's why I love the milestone feature on Bet365. Your pick.
Draisaitl points plus 128.
2+ points for Leon.
Yeah, this Minnesota team's obviously beat up a little bit here, so it might be a night where Leon can kind of dominate their blue line a little bit and get a couple of points out there. And Podkolzin and Arvidsson have been playing really well too, so that's kind of part my thought process in this as well.
Yeah, and then we got Jay's bet.
I realize it still has the units on it, so I'll just read it to you.
Okay.
Zach Hyman to score a goal, Joel Eriksson-Ek to score a goal, and under 6.5.
Joel Eriksson-Ek to score a goal.
Third line center for the Minnesota Wild. Jay's funny. Jay also, sends us his screenshot for the bet, and we all do it like so you can't see how much money is in our accounts, and you can't see what the wagers we do are. Jay just does not care. He had how much money was in his account. He had
That's on me. I should have taken it out, but
he shouldn't have sent it.
That's what I'm saying. All right.
Do you know? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Frank, I didn't realize he was here.
Yeah, he's waiting.
He usually puts a comment in the chat being like, hey, guys, hurry up.
Frank doesn't like when we waste his time, and I totally understand that. Let's get out to the Star Mechanical guest line for a second time today. Edmonton's #1 plumbing and heating company, one of the largest locally owned businesses in Edmonton. They've been doing great work for over 20 years. And speaking of great work, Frank Seravalli joins the show for our Frank Mechanical segment. Frank, let's start. Yes, I like the salute. Let's start with the Noah Philp call-up, actually, for the Edmonton Oilers. I think as much as calling up a guy to be your 4th-line center doesn't sound very significant, I think it's an interesting time to test drive him leading up to the deadline, because if this doesn't work, they might be in the market for a centerman.
I totally agree. I think this is a fact-finding mission. This is something that the Oilers need to figure out and nail down, because it may not be a need, and it may be something that the Oilers can fill internally. And now that Philp has had some additional seasoning in Bakersfield and a chance to he already got a taste of the NHL and what that experience is like. I think it was back in Nashville to start, was his first game earlier this season. And since then has had a lot to work toward. I'd imagine there's been a goal posted somewhere for Noah Philp to get back and truly get a sustained run where he can show what he can do.
The player out of the lineup is Jeff Skinner.
Again.
I think what's this, 3 games in a row.
He
just been on a 3-game point streak after being scratched. Like, I know he has a full no trade clause and all that good stuff, but like, what do you see the future of him? For the future of him?
I don't see a lot. I think the biggest thing is, does this get to an uncomfortable enough position where he might be considering willing to waive that no move clause and move on, which I think would be the best thing for the Oilers. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to move him, but to get rid of that extra $3 million, if possible, could just open up a whole other range of possibilities to maybe fill another forward position if you wanted to, or use it to get a bigger, more impact defenseman. I can't stress the optionality and flexibility enough for the Oilers front office if that were to happen. But I think at the same time, it's not really a position that you want to be in where you're asking, right? Because you went out on a limb and you really pushed and pushed to get him and to take less than was available on the open market. He believed in you and your team, and he wanted to be part of the solution. With that, you gave him the full no move as an incentive to help get the deal done. And now you can't go back on that and pressure him the other way. I don't think it looks good for whatever you want to do in the future, even though many fans would like to see that happen now. I think perhaps an extended run as a healthy scratch might change some feelings.
Do you think he can be part of the solution?
I haven't seen it this year on a consistent enough basis. Like, if you aren't scoring, what are you doing to help the Edmonton Oilers win? That's the question that every player should be asking themselves. With a lot of guys on this team, you know the answer to that, whether it's Corey Perry or Janmark or go through the list, Podkolzin. You know what they're doing to help your team win, and I've yet to see it from Jeff Skinner.
Fifth on the team in goals.
But outside of scoring, it's kind of just like, what are you doing for me?
Philip Kurashev had 54 points for the Blackhawks last year.
He's been health bombed a few times too, right?
It's like, I don't want to say empty calorie goal scoring, because I mean, look, I can't even talk about calories, but the truth is, like, is he a needle mover for you? And I think everyone universally watching the Edmonton Oilers this season would say that the answer for that with Jeff Skinner is no.
Yeah. You made a comment there about, if you can get out of his cap space, does it allow you to take a bigger swing on the blue line? And I think you and I have both kind of been aligned in, this team probably needs to take a big swing when they do make one, which is why I'm confused about these John Klingberg rumors. They're flying around like crazy today. Our chat keeps wanting us to ask you about it.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know if I'm a fan of this idea, just because, like, what's the upside? You bringing in John Klingberg doesn't solve your blue line, so why do it?
Well, the upside is it's free to find out, right? Essentially, like, what you're looking at is a deal probably under $1 million that allows him to play out this season. And the true answer is, if he signs and ends up being nothing, he's a guy that you just waive and put in the AHL and you forget about it. And that's that. It's not going to be a cap killer. He is a right shot defenseman. When he was healthy, a few years ago, he was a guy eminently capable of moving the puck. And I think the fact that the Oilers were another team that, as I reported with you guys a few months back, they took a flyer or tried to on Kevin Shattenkirk in a very similar type situation. Unrestricted free agent, looking for a place to play, right shot guy that could help you if needed. And Shattenkirk was like, hey, I've reached the point now after a few months not playing where I'm just going to retire. Klingberg had the hip resurfacing. We've seen some varied results of guys that have had a significant surgery like that and have made their way back to the NHL. Patrick Kane is the poster child for it. And last year stepped back into the NHL and had an 80+ point pace that he played at with the rest of the season with the Detroit Red Wings. I'm not projecting at all. Like, I don't think I'm real skeptical, to be totally fair, what John Klingberg has left in the tank, but it doesn't hurt to find out. And again, if it doesn't work, it's really of no risk to you.
I didn't really consider the idea of just sending him to Bakersfield if it doesn't work out. Then it kind of
right? He doesn't have to report. Like, you give him a shot. You have him practice with. First off, you sign him. You have him practice with you for a few weeks in time, in which, I would assume that they'd be able to use some. If they can structure it a whole bunch of different ways. Like, they could sign him to a PTO first, and he could practice with them for weeks and weeks. And see what he's got. They could, and with the idea that they'd give him a deal at the end of it, or they could sign him to a deal right off the hop. And if they needed to, could get LTIR benefit from it. Like, there's a million ways to do this that allows it to be risk-free. So, look, he's at a 3, 4, 5 years ago, this is a guy that was in line for a, $55, $60 million contract. I don't think he's ever been the same since he turned that deal down in season by the Dallas Stars and has, I guess had nightmares since then of how much money he's lost. And it's probably a really good cautionary tale for a lot of players that think that the grass is greener on the open market. You never know what can happen. I mean, this was a guy not that long ago that was, really highly thought of around the league as an upper echelon, number 2 defenseman in the NHL. And it's gone by the wayside in a hurry for him. And I'm sure he's desperate to find out if he can still do it.
Can I just tell you and again, maybe this isn't even a correct thing a view to have, but my concern would be he comes in and for 3 weeks, he's very good. And the Oilers look at that and convince themselves that they don't need a bigger and better splash or solution at the deadline. And then they go into the playoffs with the blue line looking as is, just plus John Klingberg. Like, I just worry that like a hot start to it changes their deadline plans. And I would much rather prefer to see them go take a serious swing on the blue line.
I don't really think that's a worry because if everyone's being honest here, I don't think the Oilers engaging in conversation with John Klingberg and his representative are sitting here today saying, this guy is the magic potion and he's going to solve all of our problems. No, they're going into it with a healthy dose of skepticism, just like you and I. They're not telling them that, I'm sure, but they're thinking about it saying, if it works, great. And if not, no big deal. In the meantime, even if he's, 60% of what he was a handful of years ago, I still think that other portion, the mystery part of this is a really precious year for the Oilers. We know why. It's the last year that they have McDavid and Draisaitl on incredibly manageable contracts. Not taking a swing and doing every single thing that you can, burn the boats, turn over every stone possible is malfeasance. It's bad stewardship. And I think they know that and recognize it. I think the challenge to this point has been finding someone who's a true fit for exactly what they want to do. I'd rather see them go into this with a really narrow focus as opposed to just, well, we'll just pick kind of whatever's best out there. And I'm not saying that that's their approach, that it's scattershot by any means, but by all accounts, they came out of their pro scouting meetings in Boston a few weeks ago, and they were thinking, hey, we've got a whole list of guys that do a lot of different things. And that's good because the need can change between now and March 7th. There's still 7 weeks plus to go. But that said, it needs to be big. It needs to be impactful. It needs to be Matthias Ekholm level quality.
You want to go a different direction?
Well, there's a player I want to ask you about, Frank, and he's not on your list, and I think it's going to take a lot of things to change. But could Trent Frederick be someone who kind of shakes loose in Boston if they fall out of the playoff picture?
I have a sneaking suspicion that Boston is going to deal Trent Frederick regardless. Okay. He's someone that teams have a lot of interest in. And I think to this point in time, the Bruins haven't been anywhere close or in the same ballpark as Frederick in negotiations. And unless that changes and unless they're willing to pay a guy who has had some pretty good years on his resume, 17 and 18 goal seasons, I don't see they're a factory. They've been able to consistently mine players that play a similar role to him. And I think they're thinking that they can just go do that again, as opposed to paying a premium to keep him. And so with that being the case, as annoying as he is to play against and how much he would potentially help the Bruins on a playoff run if they have one, they probably can't deny whatever type of return that they'd be getting and could even potentially take that and then package it to get something else later.
I would love him.
I wanted to ask you about Utah. You had a chance to sit down with Bill Armstrong, their GM, for the latest edition of Frankly Speaking, which people can find now wherever they get their podcasts from. But I also was just kind of looking through teams, and I did a video on this, under the radar trade options for the Oilers. And now that Utah is getting healthy, Durzi's about to come back, Lamoureux is going to come back soon. Let's look at a blue line that has Sergachev, Durzi, Marino, Lamoureux, Kesselring, Valimaki, Mata, Ian Cole. Robert Bortuzzo's on IR right now, but even that could be a guy who they're okay with as a 7. They have a lot of defensemen all of a sudden. Could that be a team the Oilers look at? Like, I know John Marino's past with the Oilers isn't exactly great after they drafted him. He didn't want to sign here. But, like, if you could get someone like that, I think it'd be unreal. Do you think there's a chance Utah sells off a D-man?
I mean, it's possible, but I'm not really seeing the fit for the Oilers, though. Like, who would be the guy you'd go get?
Any one of Marino, Durzi, or Kesselring would be unbelievable.
That's weird. The Oilers just had Kesselring. That ended up being a bad trade.
I know. But, like, you don't need all three of those right shot guys when you have the prospect pipeline. And again, Lamoureux's a righty as well. Mata can play the right side. Like, they have so many righties that, like, I don't think it's crazy to think you could convince Bill Armstrong to let go of one of them.
No, I don't think it's crazy. Like, but it's not going to be Durzi. It's very unlikely to be Marino unless they know something about his back that the rest of us don't, which would be scary in its own right. Kesselring doesn't really make much sense for them because he's a prime age candidate for them to keep. Ian Cole really slowed down when it came to the playoffs last year and was great in the regular season for Vancouver, but I think was a liability in the postseason. So who am I missing? Lamoureux is a recent first round pick. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing someone.
Yeah, just my only thing was, again, if they to make room on the right side for Lamoureux, could they trade one of their more established guys? But if I get
maybe Mata, I mean, but Mata is in talking to Bill Armstrong, he used the term an elite 5. The Oilers don't need an elite 5. They've got a really good 6 in Emerson, who's cheap, and a 7 in an ideal world in Stetcher.
Yeah. Marino was my dream hope.
Ian Cole did score a goal for the Oilers in the playoffs last year.
Big OT winner.
That was huge.
Yeah,
right,
you guys
got
saw
one more
that
team to ask about.
I just wanted to ask about the Blackhawks. I know we talked about Noah Philp off the top and kind of how he can change their plans. Do you think Jason Dickinson would be someone the Blackhawks would move off?
I do think it's a possibility. He does have some term though, and I think that's probably a consideration. Man, I thought you were going to ask me about the pride of Fort Saskatchewan and Colton Dock. I mean, I think Dickinson is possible. I think Connor Murphy, if you're looking for an under the radar type defenseman, what happens if Stan Bowman can convince his former protege and Kyle Davidson to retain half on Connor Murphy? And then you've got Murphy for this year and next.
Well, don't the Blackhawks have a really good prospect they can call up who's ready or something like that?
I don't think they're ready yet. They've got a bunch of really good defensive prospects.
Okay.
I mean, they could stick Kevin Korchinski back in the lineup. He was just up. They've got some guys on the way. Sam Rinzel and Artem Levshunov is their number 2 overall pick from last year. But I don't think any of them are quite ready for the NHL, which is, again, a big reason why Colorado or Chicago, when I did our team-by-team West objectives, my thing was for them, their goal is to sell judiciously, meaning you're not making deals just for the sake of it. You need to get real tangible value. And if you're going to be prying away some vets from a team that's already really thin, it better be worth it.
Fair. Speaking of Colton Dock, we do have, and don't ask how we acquired them, a bunch of his sticks behind me. So if he does come to town and he needs a stick, we have 6 of them that we can bring down to the rink for him. Frank, deadline season, always fun. Deadline countdown series at dailyfaceoff.com has a new article dropping every day over at the site. Appreciate your time today. We'll chat again next week.
Lots happening over there in Fort Sask in terms of some NHL prospects. You got Keaton Verhoff and a few houses down the street, the Dock brothers. It's all happening.
Sebastian Kosa played his minor hockey in Fort Saskatchewan. When you get off this call, Frank, you should also Google Mayor of Fort Saskatchewan Cats. And that's all I'll say to you.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Right. Well, see you, Frank. Thanks for doing this.
See you guys.
Frank Seravalli for our friends at Star Mechanical. Let's get to some keys to victory for tonight for Sherwood Power Sports and Marine, where, as Dangerous Wade said, the Oilers may be burning the boats, but they are absolutely not at Sherwood Power Sports and Marine. Hit the trails this winter and the waves next summer. Home the $50 bi-weekly ATV or the $105 bi-weekly boat. Key to victory tonight, Liam.
Just like your Stars kind of run the show. I think it's an easy one, but like they don't have a lot of players playing tonight of like a high caliber on the blue line. So you should be able to take over some things. Did you Google for Saskatchewan Meerkats? Yeah.
I
Crazy.
remember that.
Yeah. Pat said don't do it.
Because Pat is a proud Fort Saskatchewan boy.
Yeah.
Just kill him. Just kill all the cats.
She just said, hey. Maybe just look it up yourself. I don't know if I should say it.
All right. JT asked Pickard or Stu tonight. It is Calvin Pickard tonight. My key to victory is just going to be don't give the Minnesota Wild an easy one. Simple as that, guys. They're very banged up. If the Oilers bring their B+ or A game, they are going to win this hockey game tonight. Do not give the Minnesota Wild any life. Do not give them an easy one. And I like the Oilers' chances of scooping up a big victory.
All those names missing. I like power play points tonight.
I think that is fair.
That's my key.
Aaron will be live with pre-gaming at 6 tonight.
It's 5:30.
The game's at 6:30.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. At 6.
Shit.
Game's at 6 tonight?
6:07, but it might also be like a TNT game.
No, it's 6:30 tonight.
6:30.
6:30. So pre-gaming at 5:30.
It's lying to me. Whatever. The game's tonight. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, and Aaron's live at 5:30 with pre-gaming live immediately following the show with Oilers Nation After Dark. So another good reason to be subscribed to our YouTube channel. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Waz says puck drop is 6:57 tonight.
I think it's a TNT game.
Oh,
because it's one game. Carolina play at like 4 something. Maybe they're at 4:07.
Then should you do pre-gaming at 6 and just run right up till puck drop?
Kind of.
Oh yeah, Carolina Buffalo is at 4 tonight.
Yeah, so it's TNT night.
6:52 according to Jack Michaels.
Gross.
Ugh.
Awesome. That gives me some
Just
time.
keep it locked on the ON YouTube.
Yeah,
and,
we'll be
just
live
tune
at some
in.
point.
We'll be live at some point.
All right, Edmonton, Minnesota tomorrow. Another Sherwood Ford Giant Game Day edition of the show. You won't want to miss it. Hopefully, it's a victory edition as well as Edmonton gets back on the road, looking to keep their hot streak alive. Thanks for tuning in tonight, and that is a wrap. Enjoy the hockey and oil up.
Thank you for watching Oilers Nation Every Day. Hit the subscribe button to never miss a show. And for more, visit Oilersnation.com.